Mike, right, talk to me. Let's dive straight in, two-footed. What is going on at Everton?
Well, where to begin? Let's start at the top. So at the moment, we've got a bit of a civil war going on at the moment between the Everton board and the Everton fans. So I don't know if you recall what last season, obviously we were in a precarious situation in the league, and the fans done an absolutely fantastic job of rallying together with bus welcomes. Stadium atmosphere was absolutely phenomenal to just get the lads over the line. So we had a long, hard end of last season. We've all put it in. Got to the summer, and I think everyone just sort of took the foot off the pedal a little bit, just wanted to relax away from Everton, stop thinking about it. It had been emotionally draining, to say the least, for most of us. So it was a case of, at that stage, we thought, let's sort of relax and let's hope that, Lampard now with a transfer window with Kevin Felwell can look to sort of build into the season. And lo and behold, not a lot's changed, which, stupidly now looking back, I think the summer was the time that we should have carried on sort of pressing ahead with our frustration with the board. But, it's at the moment, it's a case of that time's passed and we need to take action now. So the protests and everything that you've seen, or hopefully you've seen, they've been a real inclusive protest. So previously in the past, I think some of the way that the fans have gone about it not necessarily brought everyone together. But this way feels like a lot of people have bought into it this time. They've brought a lot of the fan groups together to try and coordinate it all into one peaceful protest. And what they've decided to do is back the team fully during games. So to try and not distract away from the actual value of the 3 points. Again, seeing that on Saturday, coach welcome 2 hours before the game. Fans all outside, blue smoke, songs, greeting the players as they arrive into the ground. And then support the team during the 90 minutes. And then they had a 45-minute sit-in protest where I would say estimate of probably about 5,000 people, 5,000 to 6,000 people stay behind, which wasn't a bad start considering most of this is organised via social media. And obviously not all the fan base have access to that. So it had a decent sort of response from it. Now, the problem we had, tempered by it, which you probably will have seen, broken all over Football Focus and whatnot, was, again, a couple of hours before kick-off, our board decided to release a statement saying that it's not safe for them to arrive at the ground, of which a lot of what was put in there was in their statement was questionable, to say the least. Some of the media jumped on that, which they would. They've been peddled those stories from their mates. And I don't know if you've seen Ian Wright obviously come out and apologised, because obviously the information that he received has turned out to be inaccurate. So now we've got a case where our own board have basically tried to divert their own failings onto our fans and portrayed our own fans as the bad guys. There's no way back for them at the moment. I can't really see a way back, and that's where we currently sit. We've got a board incompetent at running the club. We've got a team on the pitch massively failing in confidence, lacking in quality, and we've got a manager who's a little bit inexperienced, and I feel for him because he's got fires going on left, right, and centre, and that's where we find ourselves right now. And what are we on the 19th of January, and we still haven't brought a signing in as well, after you've just brought in Danny Ings to score against us on Saturday.
He likes playing Everton, doesn't he?
Oh, he does. Most people do, to be fair.
If you had to sort of give a summary as to what your frustrations are with your board, what would you suggest the reasons for these protests are? Is it just due to incompetence, and now you can add lies to that as well? What's the reasoning?
Yeah, so I think, again, I can only speak for myself, but I think everyone's feeling relatively similar. So we've got a board at board level where we've spent over £500 million to drop down the league like a rock. So Machidi come in 2016, bought the club. We were excited to have him in. And one thing we'd never questioned, the guy has put his money where his mouth is, which he liked to tell Talk Sport. So he did put his money where his mouth is. However, it's not been spent wisely, and decisions off the field and on the field have been absolutely horrendous in this whole tenure. Commercial revenues are poor. We're losing over £100 million a year, so we're now in a financial fair play difficulty. So where we say we've got no money to spend, the owner has money, but we're financially hamstrung from financial fair, or not financial, Premier League profit and sustainability is what financial fair play is obviously only for teams in Europe, which we don't have to worry about, unfortunately. So we're hamstrung by the profit and sustainability of the Premier League, which means that we have hit the cap. We can't spend any money. We've been getting investigated by the Premier League last season, where they were watching what we were doing. We obviously had to sell Richarlison on the 30th of June, so we had to sell him within our account year as well. So not only do we need to sell him, we have to sell him by a certain date. I mean, if you can comprehend how bad is your club ran, when not only do you need to sell a player, we have to sell him by a certain date to fall into a set of accounts. Otherwise, you're getting penalised and points deducted. And it's left us in a position where the summer, the recruitment, strangely, I would say, defensive end of the field is moving into midfield. It seemed like a positive recruitment, clever recruitment in terms of within a budget. Tarkowski on a free, Cody on a loan, real strength up, in the centre back, centre midfield. Idrissa Gana Gay coming in for a nominal fee. Obviously bringing experience back from PSG and having been a good player with us previously. Onana, an up and coming young player who's Belgium international. So we brought in some good players in those positions where we felt like we'd be stronger, but we lost the goals. So we lost the goals of Richarlison last season, and we've replaced those goals. Well, we haven't. So we've brought in Neil Maupay and Dwight McNeil, and I don't necessarily want to go personal on those players in particular because they're not, it's not their fault they're at Everton, but those two signings epitomise exactly why we are in a situation on the field of where we're at, but they also epitomise the problems that we have off the field as to why we've had to bring those players in, because we've had to bring them in because they're brought in on a payment structure that fits within what we can operate in, and so from a board level perspective, the continuous mismanagement off the field has led to this point. Like I say, realistically, we should have kept the pressure on last season, but I think there's no way back for them now.
Well, thank you for that. Really articulate. I say I enjoy listening to you. I've got a lot of sympathy for your fan base, but it's very well explained anyway. I certainly got a better grasp of it than I did 5 minutes ago. Let's turn to more on the pitch issues now, starting with your manager, Frank Lampard. A lot of pressure on him going into this game. I'll ask you straight out. Are you sort of in the Frank Lampard out boat, or are you sort of, let's wait and see? What are you thinking in regards to your gaffer?
It's strange, this, because the answer to every fan should be he needs to go, right? So it's not as simple from a football team. And again, and I don't mean to drag on about it, but this is the position that Everton find themselves in, where we've gone through 7 managers in 8 years. So, and it's not worked. We don't trust the current board to get it right with the next appointment. So you've got half the fan base now just almost reluctantly accepting what we've got, hoping something may change. Realistically, his record, he's very, very lucky to be in a job. We've won 1 Premier League game in 13. There's not many Premier League managers that survive those sorts of runs. So I personally, from a short-term perspective, Everton have got a multitude of problems. You've got short-term, medium-term, long-term problems that they need to fix. Short-term, obviously, being staying up. So from a short-term perspective, I personally would probably look to move the manager on, regardless of Saturday's result. I'm surprised he's still there, if I'm being honest. No, I rephrase that. I'm not surprised he's still there with our board. I'm surprised he's still there in terms from a football perspective. I think the time we should have looked to change him was the week leading up to the World Cup. We lost back-to-back games against Bournemouth in the league and in the cup. And obviously that 6-week break would have been a good time to have brought someone in. We took the squad away to Australia. They could have got, time to train with them. And then obviously, that would have been the ideal opportunity. We haven't, but on the side of sort of Frank's side of it, again, he's not being backed. We're 19 days in. We are absolutely crying out for attacking players. Our attacking players are just simply not good enough. They're championship ability players at best, and he's not being backed. It doesn't look like we've got anything imminent. So it looks like we're going to go down towards the wire again, scrambling around for whatever we can get. So I know it's a long-winded answer, and it's a very difficult one to answer in as much as, from a football perspective, looking at stats, he would be gone. It's a no-brainer, but there's a lot more to it at Everton, unfortunately, at the moment than just that.
I think everything you're saying, a lot of West Ham fans can relate to everything that you're talking about, whether it be there's no point changing the manager to some extent because the new one's going to have the same problems, and we're just going round. It's a medical round essentially. You just reset and you go again in 12 months' time. You're in the same situation. And you talk about the board, and when you're talking about potential, the board says look over here, so people don't focus on what's going over there. We've had that as well when we staged our protest at Burnley. It came out that people were throwing lighters and coins at the chairman, and the West Ham fans said, well, present your evidence, please. And there was no evidence presented. But the mainstream media went along with, our owners attacked during the hang on a minute, attacked what? They left their seats and disappeared. Where's the evidence that any of this happened? So a lot of West Ham fans can relate to exactly what you're saying, unfortunately. Will you get relegated? Crystal ball time.
If nothing changes, so if we bring no signings in and we stick with the current manager, yes.
Is there any players in form going into this one? If West Ham fans had to look out for a couple of Everton players,
so our informed player is Onana, Amadou Onana. So he was a summer signing. We brought in for around about £30 million. So he's a number 6 midfielder. We've moved him around in different positions in midfield, but he's a strong point at playing the number 6. He's strong, powerful. Great tackler, wins the ball well. Took a little bit of time to settle in. The last 2 or 3 games, he's really started to raise his game. FA Cup game against Man United, he had an excellent game. And then on Saturday, he was literally the best player on the pitch, including both sets of players, albeit 2 very poor sides. So it's not the highest level to point from, but he commanded that game. He's coming into a little bit of form. He's a little bit of a leader. And I would suggest he's probably at the moment someone that we're trying to pin our hopes on in terms of having that leadership, drag us through a little bit from last season. That was Richarlison. So we're hoping he can sort of bring that from a slightly deeper role.
Good man. Right, from your team to my team, West Ham, what's your thoughts on the Hammers?
It's a strange one, isn't it? Because obviously you've had a good couple of years under Moyes, and it looked like you were building well and recruiting well. I mean, we can testament to David Moyes' recruitment over the 11 years he was with us. He was absolutely fantastic. You can probably count on one hand the transfers that didn't go well, and the ones that did were just absolutely phenomenal. They either stayed with us for years. We've still got one playing in our team now in Seamus Coleman, or we sold them for massive amounts of profit. So obviously from his recruitment perspective, it looked like he was bringing in the right type of players for you guys. I think European football, again, without being disrespectful, when you haven't quite got the squad size, it can have a bit of an effect, can't it? And have a knock-on effect. And it's when you're not in it, it's easier from an outside looking in. If I was you guys, I would stick with David Moyes 100%.
Would you?
I would stick with David Moyes. I think if the position you're in, if you're looking to get out of that position, he's the type of manager I will back more to get you out of that position and go again and be able to build. I think he's still got the enthusiasm and everything. So, he's someone that, ironically, if you lose to us on Saturday, he's someone that's ironically linked to come back to us. So he's one of the favourites up there to come back to Everton. So
I was going to turn it around on you with everything you've just said about David Moyes, and if let's say both managers lost their jobs at the weekend, which is feasible if we draw. Yeah, I'm not saying I would want Lampard, but would you take David Moyes back at Goodison Park?
So, no, I wouldn't. And I know that sounds hypocritical in terms of what I've just said, but I think it's more a case of timings and where you are at the moment in time of in your career. I think having been such a long time at Everton, and he's moved away, and it's been a long time since he's been at us, I'd hate to see him coming back into the situation where he's not getting backed, set up a little bit to fail. Would I trust his ability to be able to get us out of it? Potentially. But I think there's, I don't know. I think there's a fan base now that's so divided in terms of we don't know what we want and different things, that the full backing towards Moyes, I'm not sure would necessarily be there. So from a purely football perspective, I would have him. But in terms of everything else, I don't think it's necessarily the right appointment for Everton.
Makes sense. So the politics essentially is
absolutely
the reason
yeah.
You wouldn't want back. I think I know your answer for this then, but do you think West Ham will get relegated this season?
No, I don't. I think the Danny Ings signing's a very good signing. Short-term signing, obviously, but a good signing. I mean, if you can keep the guy fit, he'll fire you away from the relegation zone. Points wise, the league's pretty tight, isn't it? From 12 downwards, you win a couple of games, suddenly you find yourself 13th, 14th. So I think Dan Ings is a very shrewd signing for that.
Is there any players at West Ham you admire, bar the incoming Danny Ings?
So obviously we know Kurt Zouma well. So we had him on loan for a season. I think he's an excellent defender. I think has he been out a little bit the last few
weeks? Yeah, he's this Saturday will be his first game back.
Surprise, yeah. So
he had surgery during the World Cup. So he was playing with an injury, but they thought let's just get to the World Cup, get him done, and then he'll be back. So yeah, he was on the bench at the weekend pass, but didn't come on. So he's expected to start this weekend because obviously Dawson's expected to leave this week. So that means Kurt Zouma will come into defence.
So I think Zouma strengthens that defence. Obviously got a little bit of pace as well. So he's a good player. But like Thomas Soucek, I think he's a good player. But I can't profess to have watched too much of you this season. Watched a lot more of you last season. And he's just a stereotypical David Moyes signing, I would say. Energy, heart, fight, and pops up with goals from midfield. Again, I think he's lacking a little bit for this season. But he's a player that I've admired from far and thought, he's a player I wouldn't have minded to see in an Everton shirt.
What about Michail Antonio? You were linked to him, albeit it felt a little bit of a sporadic link because I've seen you linked with quite a lot of strikers, as a past player, Markovic as well. But Antonio was one of the names that was getting touted around as a move to Everton. And with West Ham signing Danny Ings, allegedly we're still after Terem Moffi, a striker based in France. And if we get both, then Antonio might be allowed to leave. Would you like him at Everton?
So again, it goes back to short-term, long-term thinking. And would Michail Antonio improve our attacking prowess 100%? We've got a Dominic Calvert-Lewin who's still not 100% fit. After that, we're going to a Nia Mopai who does not fit any sort of system of which Everton can play in. So Antonio would run the lines, would work hard up front, would bring people into play. So from that perspective, I would. But you mentioned Terem Moffi. I'd rather have him. Put it that way. Yeah. We've been linked with him in the past as well, and he's a player that I think could come in and do a great job in the Premier League. He's got goals, he's got pace, he's got power. But look, if Antonio was up there where we are right now, he comes across the type of guy who's up for a little bit of a battle, a bit of a fight. He's made a career of it. It's not come easy to him. He's worked hard to do well in that attacking position as well. I'd be surprised if Moyes let him go. I mean, unless has something happened with them, or is it just purely
just second fiddle now to we brought in Skamaka, didn't we? And we're sort of trying to play a little bit of a different way. People say we are. Antonio says we are. Moyes says we are. I've yet to see it myself. I don't feel convinced that we are. But it just feel. I think. The thing that's put my nose out of joint with Antonio is before he was only a striker at the club. We didn't have a striker last season, bar Antonio, and he kept saying, I want competition, get a striker in. We got one in, and now he's kicking off that there's too much competition by the sounds of it. He does his podcast with Callum Wilson. This was the first week back after the World Cup, and on there he got asked, rumours are you're getting linked with a move away, and he said something like, well, if something changes, it changes. And it didn't really smack of a guy that's determined to drag West Ham out of it. It felt more like a guy that was angling for a move away because he's not getting as much game time. It's not really working out for him. He's not the player he was 12 months ago. He's 32 years old now, and age is catching up with him a little bit. I think a change of scenery might just reinvigorate him a little bit. And if you can get the old Antonio back, he is a handful. All you have to do is ask Connor Cody. Antonio used to forever give Cody the runaround because just because of the pace and the power that he had. But I think a move to Everton for Antonio might work out well for Antonio and Everton, and then West Ham, because then we can go get a replacement. And it's just gone a bit stale for him at West Ham, I think, a little bit. But he'll leave a bit of a cult hero. He's our all-time Premier League goal scorer, scored in important games for us, scored a lot of goals, which kept us up when Moyes came back in after Pellegrini. So he's there in the history books at West Ham. It's just, I feel like it's coming to an end now. You might get him. 8 million or something, I think, is the price tag we're wanting, which is not inexpensive. Quite pricey for a 32-year-old, but for a Premier League club, it's punt money, isn't it? So
It's not for us at the moment, but yeah.
No, not for you. No, that's down the back. Looking for the change down the back of the sofa to get that together, I think. Let's turn our attention to Saturday then. I mean, how do you see this game going?
It's obviously it's a massive game for both clubs, isn't it? Right now,
and managers.
Yeah, and managers, yeah. And then for us, we're out the FA Cup, so it leads on to a weekend where we're free. So that's, as a manager, is never ideal, is it? If you're in the hot seat, it's a good opportunity for someone to make a change if they need to. So I mean, at the moment, neither team have got any sort of level of form going into it. I struggle to sort of come up with what I expect other than two teams that don't necessarily want the ball. I think both teams will perform better when they don't have the ball. For us, if we have over 32% possession, we've lost. We're better when the other team have got the ball. Since we've come back from the World Cup, we've only had one positive result, and that was a draw away at Manchester City. Everything else we've been beaten in, and I think away sounds silly, but I think at the moment an away game for us feels more likely for us to get something from. Obviously, the United performance in the FA Cup was a lot better than some of the performance, albeit it still ended in defeat. So I think we'll set up with a back five and probably play a 5-3-1-1 formation. And I think it's massive in the Premier League, but I think the first goal is absolutely huge. Obviously, you'll have a lot more of an attacking threat. You'll be buoyed by the new signing as well. It depends how your fans react. Are they going to fully get behind the team? I don't know where you're at currently from a fan base perspective. But to me, it's one of those games where a draw I don't think really helps either team. So, but I think we'll set out to try and nick the game and allow you to have the ball and try and hit you on the counter. How do I think it'll finish? Probably 1-1 because neither of us won it.
Yeah, I get that. It's a very difficult game to call. I can't see there being many goals either. And I agree with what you've said, which is there's two poor teams with managers who can't afford to lose this game. They'll both approach it, which is priority number one, do not lose. And I think that will play out on the pitch, really. I think you'll see two teams a little bit afraid of taking control of the game or going gung-ho, and it'll be both teams trying to sit back and say, you come at me so I can counter-attack you. So be an interesting game, and one that neither of us are looking forward to, I think. But Mike, listen, thank you very much for joining me. I massively appreciate it, and best of luck with everything, with the board and that going forward. Genuinely mean that, and I know a lot of people will be commenting similar things because, like I said, we've been through as West Ham fans. Arguably, we still are with the manager and whatnot at the moment. So, yeah, other than that, we'll leave it there, I'm afraid.
Yeah, no, appreciate it. Yeah, have a good rest of the season other than Saturday.
Well, hopefully we'll catch up with you next season ahead of a Premier League fixture and not a Championship one. It could easily be a Championship preview, but fingers crossed it'll be a Premier League one. If you've enjoyed it at home, please do drop a like on it by clicking thumbs up button. If you're new to Hammers Chat, subscribe around here. We'll catch you in a bit.